Hi, welcome to day 156. As I mentioned last week, we are really into doing some real beneficial healing work now. And you might be starting to notice what healing work can feel like. You know, one of the things we did this week, for example, for a few days at least, was noting our upsets and then finding one upset each of those days to kind of look at a little more deeply and see if we could discover what was going on with us that was causing the upset. When we start doing this kind of work, there's a sensitivity that can arise in us where sometimes we might start noticing we get upset more than we thought we did. We also become very sensitive to the feeling of being upset, so that holding a grievance may be more bothersome than it was before. We can enter this stage of uncomfortableness. In fact, I used to call it the yuck. And going through the yuck is an incredibly important part of healing. So what I want to do today is I want to share a video. This video is from Peace Pilgrim, while she explains her experience of the purification period. And when I was going through the purification period, I had read Peace Pilgrim first. In fact, this is the book that I had read. It's the first spiritual book other than A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson that I've ever read, cover to cover. It's Peace Pilgrim. Oops, if I got that upside down. Peace Pilgrim, her life and work in her own words. I had already read that book, so I already knew her story about purification, how it occurs. And that was very helpful to me as I went through my own purification process. So let me share the video with you, then I'll make a couple of comments afterwards. It's not the best quality video, by the way. So it's old and grainy.
And so I would like to draw for you a graph illustrating human potential. Now, first, I will draw the life stably governed by the self-centered nature, then the life which is a struggle between the self-centered nature and the nature centered in the good of the whole, which is the psychological growing up, and then the life which is stably governed by the nature which is centered in the good of the whole. So, I will begin by drawing a straight line representing the life governed by the self-centered nature. Now, there is struggle in that area of life because you see, body, mind, and emotions are instruments. Now, they can be used by the self-centered nature or by the nature centered in the good of the whole, but the self-centered nature never fully controls body, mind, and emotions. In fact, it is itself controlled by the wishes for comfort and convenience on the part of the body, by the demands of the mind, and by the outbursts of the emotions. So here you have a struggle between body, mind, and emotions and the self-centered nature, which uses them to a certain extent without ever being fully able to control them. In this area of life, you can do the physical, mental, and emotional growing up. Not only that, you can get an occasional confirmation from the higher nature when you touch some truth from the outside, as I did on the Golden Rule when I was still in grammar school. You can also get an occasional direct perception from the higher nature, as I did when I was 16 and a senior in high school. At that time, I went around asking everyone who mentioned God in my presence, what is God? Because I was anxious to find out something about the nature of God. But I got no answer. I didn't give up because I knew intellectually that originally it must have meant something. So I pondered deeply upon it. I went to bed and slept over it, and in the morning from the inside, I had my answer. Now, I realize that your life is very much governed by your early trainings at this point in your life, but there are still some times when you can get either confirmations from the higher nature or direct perceptions from the higher nature. Now, if you're going to begin the psychological growing up, you come to the point where you feel completely willing, without any reservations, to leave that self-centered life, which I accent. And then you go into a direct struggle between the two natures with the two different viewpoints. So now there are hills and valleys in your life, lots of hills and valleys. This struggle can be more or less stormy. Mine was about medium, and some think of it as an ascending experience, with each hilltop becoming a little bit higher than the last hilltop. Let me express this struggle in the words of a college student. She pointed to this struggle I had drawn here, and she said, I know exactly what you mean by it because I'm in it. One time, all I think about is, I want a new dress. I want a new pair of shoes. And the next minute I'm thinking, what's the matter with me? A lot of people in this world have no shoes. Why should I be thinking about such superficial things? Once self-centered and once centered in the good of the whole is what that struggle is really all about. Then, if you keep on going, you come to the point where you rise high enough in consciousness to look at the entire universe through the eyes of the higher nature, which I accent. That's a wonderful experience. It's called the peak experience by some of the scientists. Some of the religious people call it the illumination experience. It's a feeling of complete and absolute oneness with all creation. Now, I knew I was one with all fellow human beings before I got there. But now I felt a kinship with the rest of creation, the creatures that walk the earth, the growing things of the earth, the air, the water, the earth itself. You would never be a polluter after that. You have a different attitude towards your environment. And most wonderful of all, a oneness with that which permeates all and binds all together and gives life to all. Well, you still slip in and out of this wonderful experience, and then you get on to the plateaus. Now, you are in harmony most of the time, and yet there are times when you still do slip out of harmony, and finally, you succeed in changing your life, or bringing your life into harmony, or finding inner peace, which I also accent. Now you have come through the inner growth pattern. You discover now that learning and growing does not cease. The struggle is over, but the learning and growing continues harmoniously without struggle. And it was at this point in my life that my pilgrimage began. I would not have been ready for it before. Now, coming through this inner growth pattern means not only bringing your life into harmony, with the laws which govern this universe, which are the same for all of us. It also means finding and fitting into your special place in the life pattern, which is unique for every human being. This is the self-centered nature. This does not know your job in the life pattern. This is the nature centered in the good of the whole. This does know your job in the life pattern. It just needs to be awakened.
So that's what I wanted to share. And primarily I wanted to share because she talked about how you come to this point. First, you just live a basically self-centered life, right? Which has hills and valleys. I mean, everybody has days when they feel better, days when, there's more worry or something going on. But she says, then you come to this point where you're wholly willing to, I forget her exact words, but wholly willing to join with the will that's centered in the whole, right? In other words, wholly willing to transcend the ego is the way that I would word it. And she says that's when the struggle begins. And she showed these hills and valleys, right? These hills and valleys. And it had these peak experiences, which could be days or weeks of feeling a lot of joy and a lot of peace, and things seem to be flowing quite easily. It also had these valley experiences. And the valley experiences are where we seem to fall back into the ego. But we're not falling backwards, we're still moving forward. What's happening is we're seeing the ego, we're becoming aware of the ego so that we can let go of the ego. And we let go of the ego through the practices we're learning right here, by looking at our upsets, finding out what's going on in my mind that's causing that upset, by practicing the superconductor or rest, accept, and trust with our upsets, everything that we're learning how to surrender to intuition instead of the thinking mind. Everything that we're learning helps us to let go of the ego. But this period of time feels like a struggle. It feels like a struggle between the right mind and the wrong mind. And so it can be very uncomfortable. And as I was going through the purification period, whenever I was having these peace times, right, the hilltop experiences, of course, that felt wonderful. But then when it came time for my next ego letting go and I would slip into the valley, it would feel like I slipped backwards. So it was really helpful to remember that this is a part of the process. This is a very important part of the process. It's really, it feels like we're falling into the valley. It feels like we're slipping backwards on the path, but really it's more ego rising up for us to become aware of and for us to use our spiritual practices with in order to let it go and transcend more ego. It's kind of like we let go of the ego a chunk at a time. So what I want you to know, because I think a lot of people don't move through the spiritual path in an effective way because they want to feel good all the time. And that's just not what this path looks like. When the ego is coming up for us to become aware of it and let it go, it feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it feels quite yucky. When unworthiness comes up, when self-hatred comes up, when fear comes up, when guilt comes up, right? Whatever needs to come up for us, it doesn't feel good. In fact, we spend our entire life trying to repress these things and not feel them. And what's really important about the superconductor process is that the superconductor process finally allows these things to come out of repression. It allows us to be the presence of awareness, allowing this to come up, and leave us, right? This is purification, and leave us. And we become free of these energies. So as you're going through these 500 days with NTI, think of the aerobics class again, right? Like the warm up feels pretty good. Hey, yeah, I'm working out. And then you get into the aerobics. Oh my gosh, oh my goodness, right? Doesn't feel quite so great. Well, we're in the aerobics now, right? We're in the part where we're working really hard. There's a lot of really good work going on here. And what I want you to understand is real good work doesn't always feel good. And so I want you to have that understanding so that you have the patience with this process. So you can move through this process. And you saw what Peace drew on the board afterwards, where you finally reach this illumination experience, and then you're mostly in harmony. This is where I think I am now, living in mostly the right mind. I mean, mostly in the right mind. Almost all of life is a hilltop experience. Occasionally there's still a little lesson to learn, right? Still a little lesson to learn. And then eventually you get to, what we'll call full enlightenment, where there's no more lessons to learn, right? It's just full speed ahead, up, 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 continuing illumination. It's worth it. Everybody wants to get to the other side, but to get to the other side, you have to go through the struggle. I think in A Course in Miracles, it calls it going through the darkness to the light. The struggle does not have to be bad. I think when the struggle is bad, it's because you don't understand what's going on and you're resisting it the whole way. If you just understand this is the process, and just breathe through it, just superconductor through it, it doesn't have to be bad. She mentioned that it could be relatively easy or difficult, and she said hers was about medium. I think mine was better. I'm going to call mine better than medium. Maybe not easy, but better than medium, because I had her teaching to help me through it, because I had her perspective of the hills and valleys. So that's why I wanted to share that with you. I don't really have anything to say about the upcoming week. You'll continue with different daily exercises. There is a meditation option for this review day. That is the Be Natural meditation. It's another meditation that helps us get better at the doing nothing meditation. I just wanted to let you know that this audio option that you have today is a completely new audio. You've never listened to it before. So you might enjoy that. And also, we only have a couple more weeks left with the Do Nothing meditation. Pretty soon, we're going to be moving on to another type of meditation. So enjoy the Do Nothing meditation in these last couple of weeks. And I think that's all I have to say. I just want you to know I'm behind you. I'm excited for you, but I do know how tough this purification period can seem. This curriculum can do so much for you. Just stick with it. Just do it, right? Just do it. And I know that you won't be sorry that you did. All right, that's it. I'm going to let you go for today. Bye.